everybody, I'm Jordan.
Hi, I'm Jennifer.
And today we're going to be talking to you about the theater of the absurd. So what is theater of the absurd? Well, during the 1950s and 60s in Paris, France, the philosophical school of thought existentialism gave rise to many different forms of expression of this belief that there is no predestination. And one of those was theater of the absurd, in which a few noted playwrights from Europe in a very decentralized fashion kind of took a stab at the status quo through theater. Other notable events going on during this time period included the Indochina War between France and Indochina, the McCarthy witch hunts for communists happening in the United States, and the post-World War II peace sort of pseudo-bliss that was happening, in which we tried to pretend that everything was fantastic and wonderful, but it really wasn't.
Senator Joseph McCarthy led the House Committee on Un-American Activities looking for communists, assisted by FBI Director J. Edgar Hoover.
Philosophical school of thought, existentialism, is an important influencing factor for the creation of the theater of the absurd. This school of philosophical thought has a firm belief in free will and a firm disbelief in the idea of predestination. Important philosophers of this school included Soren Kierkegaard, Fyodor Dostoevsky, Friedrich Nietzsche, and Jean-Paul Sartre.
France went to war to try to retain control of Indochina in 1946 to 1954. The war was unpopular and ultimately unsuccessful.
During the years after World War II, we liked to make it seem as though everything was perfect. While the reconstruction and rebuilding in Europe was difficult and challenging, and there was still a great deal of rationing for many years afterwards, if you look back at the images of the time, they all, as these pictures show, glorified this time as being very idyllic, when in fact it was anything but. The soldiers who came back often had what was called then shell shock, known today as PTSD, and the women who had gone to work in the factories and other places to keep the country running while the war was being fought are suddenly finding themselves back at home being expected to prepare these elaborate meals for their families and not work outside the home. That is what led to the problem that has no name being identified in the book The Feminine Mystique by Betty Friedan, which is credited with one of the catalysts of starting second-wave feminism at this time.
Since minimal set design and costuming didn't require a large theater of the absurd productions were often in smaller venues. Notable playwrights of the absurd included Samuel Beckett, Eugene Ionesco, Jean Genet, Tom Stoppard, and Harold Pinter.
So what sort of storylines do we see in plays written by playwrights of the absurd? Well, absurd storylines, of course. In these storylines, we see characters who are often at a cognitive dissonance with their very own lives. They don't fit in with what they've created for themselves. We also see them to be very lacking in purpose. And when one watches these plays, as it goes from scene to scene, there's very often a lack of cause and effect relationship between the events that are happening on stage. In Samuel Beckett's play Waiting for Godot, the two main characters hang out by a tree waiting for Godot to show up. Spoiler alert, he doesn't show. While these men are waiting for the person who does not show, they talk about life, the futility of it, and contemplate suicide. The play Endgame by Samuel Beckett focuses on Ham, who is a blind master, and Clove, his resentful servant, and their incredibly dysfunctional relationship. Oh, and spoiler alert, Ham's parents live like Oscar the Grouch. They live in trash cans.
A play called The Dumb Waiter by Harold Pinter is about two characters, Ben and Gus. This play has these two characters as hired killers who are waiting to kill their victim. Spoiler alert, they were hired to kill each other.
In the play The Caretaker by Harold Pinter, two brothers independently meet a very interesting fellow named Davies, who is a hobo. Spoiler alert, he tries to drive a wedge between them.
A play called The Birthday Party by Harold Pinter. The character Stanley is approached by two men who are about to punish him for the unknown crimes committed. Stanley's landlady staged a party for him, But spoiler alert, things get ugly. Another play called All That Fall by Samuel Beckett is about an old woman journeys to meet her blind husband at the train station and encounters several interesting folks along the way. The train is delayed, and she later learns that it was because a child fell off a car. And spoiler, her husband may be to blame.
During this time period, audiences were very respectful, as they tend to be today. They did not participate in the performance by interjecting or reacting in a disrespectful way. They were much more passive than we had seen during previous eras of theater. The performers of theater of the absurd were just your average everyday actors. However, as these plays have become more beloved and gained esteem in society, actors who also are beloved and have gained esteem in society are being cast in the roles. Here we see an actor, Michael Gambon, who's very well known for playing Dumbledore in the Harry Potter series, starring as the husband in All That Fall. Theater of the absurd can be thought of as being almost anti-technology. In sharp contrast with modern productions, there is almost as little technology involved in these productions as humanly possible. And even in modern productions, we tend to see these same qualities. Thank you for taking this journey with us. We hope that you learned something and were entertained at the same time.